Yeah, I'll have to bring up the chat here. I got you subscribed and stuff, so I should be able to
Fire
find
up all the, get all the hamsters in the machine fired up here. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I am RJ Carter, the Senior Managing Editor, Chief Cook and Bottle Washer here at Critical Blast, and we are in the Critical Blast Caverns tonight with Larry Higgins from Nyobi Comics. Larry, how you doing tonight?
Good, brother. What's going on tonight, man?
Man, we're just rocking and rolling and waiting to hear some good Nyobi news. I've got the link in the chat to your Indiegogo, so everybody, well, that's not in the chat, but if you're coming into the chat, hit the description. It's the very first line there. You'll be able to go to your Indiegogo for Nyobi Birthright, which
Birthright
is a special one-shot.
No, actually, what it is actually a two-part mini-series. So there's going to be we're actually really hard on work on the second one, kind of as we speak, while we run the Second Chance Indiegogo campaign. So I'll just break it down like this: the deal is that we were trying to do an ongoing series, right? When we first started, way back in the turbulent times known as 2014, we were doing a little black and white local comic called Nyobi. And we cranked out 5 issues, issues 1 to 4, and then a one shot on the villain. But the problem was that these were taking a long time to do, and they weren't looking exactly like the way I wanted them to look. And so when you're trying to do an ongoing series and you're only getting a book maybe once a year, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, can you really call it an ongoing series? I mean, by the time you get issue 2, you completely have forgotten about what the hell what was going on in issue 1 after a whole year, you know, where people are kind of
changed in crowdfunding, by the way.
Right. And so, you know, we're kind of conditioned, you know, a lot of us anyway, especially if you're old school comic book collector, that you buy, you know, you get comic books every month, right? You know, yes. And so I've always been conditioned that way. And we're not going to be able to do every month, but we are trying to pick up the pace on Nyobi. But what we decided to do was kind of pull back a bit and say, okay, we're not going to be able to do this book as an ongoing series. But what we can do is do it in mini series, right? So I could do like a 2-part mini series and do the Birthright story from beginning to end. And then, you know, when we're ready to do the next set of Nyobi books, it'll be a different story arc that will have a beginning and an end, you know? So they'll all be like, you know, sets, mini series sets, you know, but they'll all loosely connect as time goes on.
Okay, so like a large overarching story of stories.
Right. You know, people that do this really well right now are is the Danger Girl. You know, Danger Girl's still a thing, but when they release Danger Girl comics, they do it as like 3-part or 4-part miniseries. And then you don't see it for a while, and then Danger Girl comes back with another miniseries. You know, I really kind of like that format. I think that's doable. And you know, with Nyobi, we did the part 1. We initially launched on Kickstarter. And it did, you know, really well for us. I mean, really well for us is, you know, $7,000, you know, which is, you know, it might be peanuts to some people, but it was our best Kickstarter. And it was the first time that we actually put Nyobi in full color, which it had to be done. So, you know, we kind of leveled up from being the small black and white comic book to the small colored comic book. But we changed up the art team. We brought in some A-listers for some variant covers. And what ended up happening was people were wondering how they can get Nyobi, because you see, there's a lot of people, and I'm sure you're aware of this, that just won't go use Kickstarter for whatever personal reason. Maybe it's because you know, they didn't do business with Zach, or maybe because they're not familiar with the layout, or they just couldn't be bothered. Whatever the case may be. So
they support punching Nazis in a comic book.
Well, you know, there's that too, right? So, you know, we decided to bring it over to Indiegogo, kind of like a second chance campaign. We had a couple new covers done by Luigi Terrell. You know, anyone out there is a fan of Antarctic's Rags, we certainly know who Luigi Terrell is. He's the artist of that fantastic book. And so, you know, he did an exclusive cover just for Indiegogo. Something special for the people over there. And then we did another cover which features Sailor Rogowski and Nyobi on the same cover, because Nyobi's actually going to be appearing in the Sailor Rogowski comic book, which will be out on Patreon from Brian Ball and team, I believe, like September 25th. So yeah, it's gonna be really cool. You know, I'm kind of got like this little thing going on, you know. And then there's Punchline, and Niobe's going to be on that. I don't know if you've seen it, but Matt Walden, like last month, posted this beautiful collage cover for Punchline 15 that had all these like great independent comic book characters on there, and Niobe was right there, man, right on the front cover, front and center, you know. So it was like, oh man, I starting to see the potential what could be, you know.
Just another new shared universe of characters, so to speak.
Well, yeah, I mean, by him including her and a bunch of other characters, I mean, you know, Booster Kiwi, you know, even Booster Kiwi's on there, right? Booster Kiwi, of course, from Fanspeak, drawn and quartered, the fan edition, good friend of mine. He's on the cover. Scalpel Zero from Tank Fair Art is on the cover, you know. Ben Dunn's Ninja High School characters are on the cover, right? You know. I used to be a big fan of Ninja High School back in the day. So, you know, and this book is going to be available in comic shops, you know. So, like my local comic shop said they're going to order a few extras and they kind of want me to hang around when they come out. And, you know, I can't wait. It's going to be good times.
Very cool. So let's talk a little bit about Niobe and how you developed the character, where she came from. First of all, I like the look. To me, it's got kind of a J-pop look to it. I don't know if that's, you know,
no, bud, you hit it right on the money. Yeah, here's the thing with Niobe. She was made way back in this turbulent time called the 1990s, and I mean like 1990 exactly. I was 16 years old. I'm a tabletop RPGer. You know, I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. And there was this superhero game called Heroes Unlimited, and I made Niobe for this superheroes game back when I was 16. And then I would draw these really crappy pictures of her. And throughout the years, I would just use her in various superhero games that I was playing, whether I was the game master or just a player. And, you know, one day, I think this was like early 2014, you know, we were all kind of sitting around the gaming table in the kitchen. And I was saying to the boys, I said, you know, we've been doing this for years and years and years. I said, we craft our own stories. We make our own characters. And I said, but the only people that know about it are like the 6 guys sitting around the table. You know what I mean? And I said, what if we like, you know, made a comic book, you know, and like we take all these ideas and characters we created. And because I said, we pretty much got our own universe right now, and put out a comic book. Dude, I got laughed out of the room. I got laughed out of the room. You know what I mean? By my own friends, you know. And I'm like, whoa. I said, you guys don't think I can do it? I said, well, all right. I took it as a challenge, you know, and I set out on my quest, you know, to figure out how in the hell do you put together a comic book, you know, and I had no clue how to do it. There's no school for this that, you know, teaches you from A to Z on how to do this. You know, everyone kind of has to bumble around and figure it out. And hopefully, you know, you might find a couple of good mentors to guide you along the way. But when I started, I absolutely had nothing. You know, I had the internet and, you know, that was about it. So I figured, what I would do is I would get some artwork done of her that wasn't mine, you know, something that actually looked nice and professional. So I discovered conventions again. And not only did I discover conventions, but I discovered this wonderful place in conventions called Artist Alley. Right. And in Artist Alley, oh my God, there are these people that do art and you pay them and they draw art for you. And it was like the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And it, you know, it spans from unknown local talent all the way up to industry pros. And I'm like, oh man, this place is awesome. So I started getting a bunch of art done, you know, from, like I said, from locals in the area to well-known name people. And when I started seeing what Niobe can actually look like through the eyes of a professional, I was like, okay, definitely doing the comic. I wrote a script. I figured out how to write a script my way. I mean, I went to, you know, people ever want to see good examples of scripts, comic book script archive, I think is the name of the site. And there is just a ton of scripts there from a variety of writers. So I just went through a few of the scripts, read a few of them just to see how they're formatted and the pacing. Then I used a template from a Witchblade script, because I really used to love Witchblade. I used to love a lot of the kind of 90s Bad Girls comics.
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
Boxes. I'm sorry, what?
I've got a set of Sarah Pazzini's adventures somewhere over here in the boxes.
There you go. Right. Which reminds me, I was actually talking to Randy Green recently. His birthday just went by the way. Happy birthday, Mr. Green. And yeah, we're talking about him doing Nyobi cover, which would be like total bucket list thing for me to have a Witchblade artist do
Very
something
cool.
on Nyobi. I mean, but going back to story, once I saw people do the art and I had the script done, then it was okay. Now, how in the hell do I find a sequential artist? And so I was at my local convention and I talked to a guy there, and we start to put together a comic book. Got the first Nyobi out probably about a year later after all that actually started to go down. Just printed it locally at a little local shop, and put it on Kickstarter for a modest, I think it was $1,250, and I think we did like $1,800, which just kind of blew my mind at the time. But then I also realized just how expensive it was to put together a comic book. You know what I mean?
Yes. $1,800 probably didn't cut it.
No, God, no. But it gave us a start. What it allowed us to do was okay. It allowed me to see that there could be potential in this. Even though it kind of set us back a little bit, it was just very exciting to see something get funded. The expenses came in like when we made the first one, no one really got paid. You know what I mean? It wasn't a paid gig. We just kind of did it to see if we could do it. Sure. And then we split the profits when we sold the book at a local con, which was like $200 each. It was nothing, right? But it allowed us to have a base. So it said, okay, now we actually got a book. It's here, it's printed, and if you build it, maybe they'll come, and we'll see what happens when we try number 2. We did number 2, it was slightly more successful than number 1. We did a number 3, slightly more successful than number 2. We did the number 4, and again, each book we did, Kickstarter wise, got better, and better. Not by leaps and bounds, mind you, but there was always some growth, right? And and so that was kind of exciting to see. And the last Kickstarter actually didn't put me in the hole. I think we either we broke even or there was a couple of dollars in the green. So
at some point you start to think you're onto something.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a long, hard road, comic books, man. And I'm sure a lot of people understand this, but there's some people that don't. Some people that come into this, maybe they watch a few videos on the internet. They think that this is going to be an easy ride or quick money. Boy, let me tell you something, man. Don't come in the comic books with that sort of thinking, because you're going to be in for a long, hard, expensive road, my friend.
Paraphrase the country song. If you're going to be a comic star, let me tell you, it's a long, hard ride.
Right. It's a grind. Once in a while, someone just has lightning in a bottle and they strike it. But for the most part, on the average, it's many years of hard work, and you can work on a book, on your series, on your thing for 10 years, 15 years, and still never get any sort of real mainstream success, or you're never going to be the next Brian Pulido or Ethan Van Sciver or any of these cats who are doing big 6-figure sort of crowdfunding campaigns. But it'd be nice, of course, if it happened, but don't get into it thinking that's going to be your path. That's like 1 out of 10,000 creators will actually achieve a level of that sort of success.
Yeah, if you can get 4 figures, be ecstatic, guys.
Yeah. I mean, my goal now is 5 figures, right? We did $7,000 on the last Kickstarter. I'm pushing for 10. I'm gonna push for 10 on the second book, because the first book did so well. People really liked it. Anyone that's reviewed it or took a look at it, kind of always gives me the compliment that it has that X-Men feel to it, which is all the best things to say to me, because I was a huge X-Men fan growing up. So maybe people read it and they feel like it's like X-Men but without copying the X-Men. So that's pretty cool. And and man, we got a nice crop of variant cover artists this time around. We got RB White returning. He done work for Zenoscope and Action Lab Comics on Zombie Tramp and things of that nature. We got Paul Green coming back, and Ula Moss. Ula Moss is just a legend in this business for color work. She colors all the J. Scott Campbell Black Cat covers, right? So if you think those are nice, she's part of the reason why. Man, we got Luigi Terrell, as I said, from Rags, on board. Dude, we have Steph Wilson. If you're on Facebook at all and you're following the indie comic book scene on Facebook, you definitely know who Steph Wilson is. Yep. Yeah, and then we got Dan Overa doing colors for Nyobi. Like I said, we're in color for the first time. So Dan Overa comes from us from Action Lab Comics. He used to work on a book called Puppet Master. So that's pretty cool, you know. So yeah, we're rocking right along.
Awesome. But you mentioned how in 1990 there weren't any schools that would teach you how to make a comic book. And if anybody's watching the replay of the stream or you're coming into the chat now and you're like, yeah, I'd love to do it, but the only thing I've got to teach me how to make a comic book is reading my comic books and see what they did. 1993, if you'd waited 3 years longer, you'd had access to Understanding Comics by Scott Mccloud. This is a sine qua non for anybody who wants to be making comic books, and it's written as a graphic novel, which makes it nice and easy to read. That tells you exactly how to do a comic book. And in fact, if you get the companion piece to this, Reinventing Comics, which I also have back there, he gets into the industry of it and the whole distribution and printing and what to do. And it's, again, done as a comic book, and it covers web comics and in the future. Scott Mccloud is...
yeah, I think that's the one I had read. Yeah, he's got 2 of them. I hear one is really, really good, and one is, somewhat good. Well, like I said, I wasn't researching how to make comics in 1990. When I say there was no school, I meant like in 2014, like there wasn't a place you could go to physically that would teach you how to make comic books. There's all kinds of resources out there on the net. And there are all kinds of books. And Scott Mccloud's book is kind of one of those very high revered books to definitely be looking at. He goes through everything. He explains to you all the terminology, what a gutter is, in between panels and things of that nature. It's really a good read, but you still kind of have to, even if you read it, you still have to kind of bumble your way through figuring out how to make a comic book, because everyone's path in this is different. I never talked to anyone who said that their process of making a book was exactly like mine. Everyone I talk to always seems to have a different way of doing things, and it's whatever kind of works for you. You got to figure out that path. Now, I've been doing this for 6 years. I think I pretty much got, our the Nyobi format down of, how things get put together. But I had to, spend time, through trials, failures, and successes to figure that out, and though put together a team. Like, one of the biggest hindrances that we had when we first started was things were just taking too long for the art. And, sometimes you would go for a while without hearing from the artist, or, problems with the printing. But now I kind of put together like a really reliable team, and, these guys are hungry. And they're, they want to make books, and they're waiting on me now. That's the thing. They're waiting on me to finish this, to finish the script for the second book, so we can all get started on pages.
Well, it's good to have a team working with you, and it's obviously took a while to put that together, because you said you were role playing at the dinner table, and it was just you going off because you didn't have any support.
No. I mean, I had to dive in this, I was always a comic book fan, but it's a whole new world when you become a creator, Yeah.
So tell me about the world of Nyobi. I mean, first of all, where did you come up with the name and the power set? I guess the power set was obviously something you came up with from the Heroes Incorporated game you were playing. I was a Champions guy in the 80s, by the way.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm glad you mentioned Champions, because I have a whole stack of Champions, Heroes System 6 books right in front of me. I got the Champions Powers, I got the Champions Complete, I got the big blue books, the Hero System 6.
The original box, and I lost it a long time ago.
I mean, the Hero System is out of print now, which is kind of sad, because that, since about Champions, and it's a very complex system, where you can really, and this is the thing I tell people, when they're like, how do you come up with character ideas? I said, just grab a couple of superhero role-playing game books and start making things. You know what I mean? Now ideas will kind of come to you, and the champion system is really good for that, because you can pick out your advantages, your disadvantages. You can pick out your personality quirks and traits. Your strengths and your weaknesses, and the way that they craft powers. You can pick a template power, or you can go through all the mathematics in that book and create something unique and all your own. But yeah, I mean, when you mentioned Nyobi kind of has that J-pop feel. Back in 1990, I was watching a lot of anime, And so Niobe was came across as an influence of two big things. One was the X-Men, and the other was the old school late 80s, early 90s sort of anime that I was watching. Things like Gunbuster and Dominion Tank Police, and of course, classics like Akira and Ghost in the Shell and Appleseed and all that sort of good stuff. And so yeah, of course, she had long pigtails like most of the anime girls and sort of flashy makeup. And the X-Men influence really comes through the powers, I guess, because she makes portals and she teleports. So think maybe Magic from the X-Men, who is my kind of like my favorite X-Men, probably my favorite Marvel character of all time, is Ilyana Rasputin. But there's also a little bit of Dazzler in there because Niobe is a J-pop star in the comic book, and she does sing, and she does have a lot of light and glitter around her, so there's influences that I kind of pulled and tugged from all over the place.
That's very cool. So this book that you're doing now, this is was this technically the second book in her sequence? I guess if you want to go all the way back to your 1990s book, it would be even
the first book ever came out in 1990. The first book came out in 2014. It was that long of a build up from the time the character was made, from the time that it was a comic. But there's been 6 issues now in total. There was like numbers 1 to 4, then there was the villain spin-off, and then now there's Birthright. So this is my my 6th go at making a comic book, but my 7th campaign.
Okay. Now, Birthright, I've read a little bit about the plot on that one. And I compliment your bravery for driving straight into a controversial subject for a comic.
Oh, I'm not scared, dude. So,
here, I'm not gonna. You're nervous then, man, because that's.
No, I'm not scared. I like to tackle these things on purpose. I think I think if you're going to tackle social issues, right? And folks, if you're not understanding, well, I'm sure we'll explain here soon enough. But Niobe, Birthright deals with the social issue of abortion, and that's just how it is. But if you tackle it in a way where you're not presenting a side, like, if you read Niobe Birthright #1, you're not going to go, oh, LP or Larry is definitely pro-rights or pro-life. You're not going to see that. What you're going to see is a story unfolding about a situation, basically through the eyes of an outsider observer, and see how it kind of unfolds. I remember one guy, Phil Lockyer, who reviewed the book. He said this book's got 3 things I normally don't go for. He says it's got drama. He says it's got politics. And it's got religion, right? And I was like, oh, damn, here we go. But then he goes, but it's all done with class and taste, and he makes it work, And I'm like, woo!
That's the trick.
Right? And so,
story.
And I think a good story, whether it's comic books or anything else, will do that. It will present to you an issue that is relevant in today's society, but kind of not preach to you about any sort of path to follow, but just kind of give you that story, and you kind of formulate your own opinions and your own thoughts on it, And I think if someone can present a story in that light, then they're doing very good. The very first issue, Niobe, also was on a social issue. It was about teen suicide and depression, and about being bullied. And people kind of like the way that we tackled that. And I think, you're going to see a lot more of that with Niobe going forward, that I'm just going to look at something that's going on in the world that kind of resonates with me, something that I kind of want to write a story about, and what would her involvement be in said social situation,
Right. What? Gosh, it's too bad you can't turn on the news like, tonight and find some sort of major social issue that's.
Oh, dude, listen, the next Niobe, I'm pretty sure it's going to be called Niobe Outbreak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Flat, hands down. I mean, if I don't talk about the COVID in one of our comic books coming up down the road, then I'm doing something wrong. I'm picturing like Niobe cover with her COVID mask on. You know what I mean? I got ideas, dude.
That's how jaded I am to COVID right now after 2 months in isolation, is that I wasn't even thinking that. I was thinking Minnesota.
Well, Minnesota is something else. I'm in Canada, so I'm just kind of hearing about it now. Like over the last maybe 24 hours. I saw the video of the man dying, underneath the knee of a police officer, and I certainly understand why they're upset. About
Sure.
the looting and stuff. I don't know, but I can tell you that when you watch that video, yeah, that's heart-wrenching.
Yeah,
You legit see the guy say, "I can't breathe." You see this big knee just kind of crushing his windpipe,
yeah.
and by the time the police officer finally does lit off him, I mean, the guy is dead.
And that officer's been charged with third-degree murder. I just read shortly before coming onto the stream. So
Yeah, well he should be. I mean, damn. And this puts a
yeah,
real spotlight on him. I mean, and this isn't the first time we've seen things like this. I mean, God, I'm old enough to remember Rodney King. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I live not far from Ferguson, so I had to drive through it on the way to work all the time.
right. And that would be another issue that I wouldn't mind tackling. Underneath the right story. I guess the problem is that so much to do in so little time, and by the time I get to something like that, it's going to be old news, right?
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, well, yeah, by the time we get to any sort of outbreak virus book that Nyobi's got to deal with, it's going to be old news. Hopefully by then too. I mean, here in Canada, we're pretty much still underneath a lockdown. A lot of our restrictions are starting to loosen up. But where I live, we just got 6 brand new cases, so now they're starting to tighten the wrench again.
Yeah.
So it seems to be an ongoing. And I work in the hotel industry, as my day job. And I can tell you that we have no one coming to the hotel. Like, I'm surprised we haven't shut the thing down yet. You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
who wants to be kept in closed quarters with a bunch of strangers that you don't know where they've been?
Well, yeah, and that's just it. And the thing is that we've closed all our borders, right? To the states and to neighboring provinces. So no one's kind of coming in or getting out unless if you're deemed an essential worker, And so without the tourism and the travel and the hockey teams and the organized sports and the concerts and the festivals that usually go on here, we might have like 5 people on a Saturday night out of an 80-room hotel. So a lot of times I'm a night auditor. I'm there in the middle of the night. And a lot of times I'm just literally sitting there either working on my comic or watching YouTube and essentially getting paid for nothing right now,
Yeah. Well, as long as you're there getting paid, I mean, take advantage of it.
Well, there's the good and the bad with it all, I guess. Right? Got to find the shining light in there somewhere. And that's where a lot of
not spending while we're sitting home. I mean, I've got free money sitting around now.
Well, I mean, this is where a lot of the Nyobi work kind of gets done, is kind of at my night job. Yeah, I get killing 2 birds, with one stone here. Here, I think I'll go on camera there. All right. Got my Nyobi Paul Green t-shirt on, by the way. You can get one of these on the Indiegogo, folks, if you're interested in the shirts. They're made by popartgear.com. They have like the only people that we've ever got a licensing deal with for Nyobi. They have like a 3-year contract with us where they're the only ones sort of allowed to make Nyobi apparel. But they have a lot of great shirts on their site, man, from from a lot of indie and industry pros. So go check them out. Popartgear.com is a free plug for those guys.
Very cool. So you don't have to do your own Teespring or TeePublic kind of thing. You got somebody paying you already to put them on the shirts. And
yeah, well, they sell shirts, and we get a cut of it. And then when I want shirts, I basically get them at cost, and then I can put them up on my site, and we'll sell them that way. Just like I think we got like 12 or 13 different shirts. I only own like 3 or 4 of them myself.
That's quite an array of shirts for an indie character. So
we kind of went shirt crazy. I won't lie, just kind of like the way I went variant cover crazy. But it is what it is. We're having fun with it. Here's one of the hard copies right here. This is the RB white cover. Oh, sure. This is the RB white cover. He's done, like I said, a lot of work for Zenoscope Comics and Action Lab Comics. Of course, he's got a very sort of sexy 90s style. On the inside, this is kind of how the pages look. Very nice popping colors. Great lettering work and sound effects by Mr. Joe Rodriguez of Metal Ninja Studios. He did a fantastic. He also did all the pre-press, so meaning like he added the bleeds and formatted the book for print. And so this is a standard floppy. This isn't like a giant graphic novel 80-page endeavor. This is a 24-page book.
Yeah, but that looks like a pretty stiff cover.
It is a stiff cover. This is actually printed by Comics Wellspring. I put their ad right on the back because not only did they give me a significant discount by doing it, but they did such a great job. And people always kind of ask me who I print through. Well, there it is. There's like all their info right on the back. So if you like how this book looks, and I love how this book looks, those are the guys you might want to check into, check their pricing, and see what they can offer to you. But yeah, I think they did a fantastic job with this book. This was the first time I used them, and I'll be using these guys for as long as they're in business now. Just what they did was just looks so good. This is a beautiful 2-page spread by Samir Sameo, by the way, the interior artist of the book.
That is an awesome spread. Now this is present day story too. This isn't like somewhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, as present as it can be. By the time some people, I mean, I wrote this story last year, and but
well,
yeah.
I mean, the calendar is going to stick to it, but anybody can pick it up and say this is happening now, whether they read it now or they read it 10 years from now.
I mean, when I wrote it, the abortion sort of controversy was more in the news than it is right now, right? But yeah, it's still definitely relevant. Steph Wilson variant cover, by the way. Steph Wilson's the only person that can kind of do sexy, sassy, and cute all in the same image, Well, yeah, I say the second person. Steph Wilson's got a style that kind of reminds me a lot of Dan Mendoza, So if you kind of like that sort of style, then this will be a great cover for you right here. And let's just look at a couple of the books. Like, here's the thing about the Indiegogo is that this book has been done. It's been done for a while. We've already done a Kickstarter, already done the fulfillment of the Kickstarter. And so this is just kind of like, icing on the cake, right? We're going to print a few more. We're going to send them out. We're going to do a couple of new covers. This gives a chance to anyone that missed it the first time to kind of get on it now and then get ready when we launch the second on Kickstarter. And I think that's going to be the formula going forward. There's always going to be like our big push on Kickstarter, and then we're going to do a smaller Indiegogo campaign. And then next book comes out, we're going to do another big push on Kickstarter, and then another sort of smaller Indiegogo campaign, and kind of build our audience that way on both platforms. I'm a big advocate of trying to get your book out everywhere you can and not limit yourself to one particular platform.
All right. Now, you said you thought you kind of went crazy on the variant covers here. How many variant covers do you have to Birthright?
Well, now it's going to be, let's see, there's Paul Green, Steph Wilson, R.B. White, Samir Sameo. So that's 4 covers right there. Then we have the blank sketch variant, which I guess you can call a cover. I mean, and then we have the 2 from Luigi. So I guess right now that means 7.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, and there is the thing of like too many variant covers. But here's the thing. There's a reason why people do variant covers. One, people like to have something that someone else doesn't have. When we did the Paul Green variant cover on Kickstarter, we put a limit on it. I only printed 125 of those suckers, So people know, Paul Green fans know that that's an extremely rare Paul Green cover with extremely rare low print run. That tier sold out on Kickstarter. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Steph Wilson has a lot of fans. So we'll get Steph Wilson fans coming over to buy the comic, not because they're interested in Nyobi, but because they're interested in Steph's artwork. And hopefully, they buy the book for the cover, but hopefully, we want them to open the book and actually read it. And if they enjoy what they see, maybe they come back for more, And so that's the reason why a lot of people do variant covers, is because they'll get a couple of known names, and hopefully their fans will come over and buy the book. And on top of that, they don't really cost you any extra to print, but you can ask for a premium for your variants, depending on who's did them and sort of what kind of availability you make that variant. That's why in Marvel you have the 1 out of 10s or 1 out of 25s or 1 out of 50s, Right. And I remember getting sucked into the craze when I got back into comic books, because I was a big J. Scott Campbell fan. So I was buying all these expensive J. Scott Campbell variants left, right, and center. And I kind of had to pull the trigger on that, like pull back a little bit, go, maybe that's a little bit much. But I think, a good variant's a nice thing to have. You know, a lot of people have utilized variants. Brian Polito from Lady Death, let me tell you something. You think 6 or 7 variants is a lot? Go check out his stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and
Well,
they
you
all
know,
sell.
at least it's, you know, it's something where it's limited, but it's accessible through a tier. It's not something where you've got to go to your comic shop and the retailer says, "Oh crap, I got to buy 50 copies of this."
Yeah, yeah. You're not putting someone
Big
in the
figure.
hole for it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember that, you know, happening. There was one variant I did want, and it was like a 1 out of 100. And the comic shop's like, yeah, there's no way we can order 100 copies of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's too bad. Maybe I can find it on eBay for 3 times the price. You know,
I do know a comic shop where I want to say it was Year of the Villain #0. It was sort of a cheapie book, and there was a 1 in 100 variant cover to that, and a guy wanted it, and he bought 100 copies of the other book, so that he could get his variant cover.
That's hardcore, man. That's a guy that's got a lot more money than I do, and probably a bigger fan than I am. That's pretty hardcore. And but it happens. You know, some people really want those books. You know, some people are just, you know, hardcore collectors, man. Like I said, you know, Paul Green. He was our big A-lister. He's got a huge following. He's got a style that reminds you of J. Scott Campbell. Funny enough. And man, when people knew that we had that cover, which this isn't on the Indiegogo, by the way. So people, if you see this, this isn't on the Indiegogo, but because we made it a Kickstarter exclusive, so I'm going to keep my word to that, not put it on Indiegogo. But you know, when people saw this cover, when Paul Green fans saw his cover, you know, I got contact like, how do we get a hold of this book? You know, like, I'm a big fan of Paul Green. I never heard of this before. And so that was really cool. So this is a really nice cover, man. But these aren't cheap to get. I mean, the thing is when you hire an artist like this, you know, they come with a price tag. You know, I probably spent over $2,000 just paying for various covers. You know what I mean? $2,000 alone.
Green would be $1,000 just for the cover.
It was under $1,000 for that cover. I'll say that much, but it was still, you know, like, I don't want to give away his rates, you know, like, it's kind of bad taste to give away artist rates, but it was under $1,000. I'll give you that. But yeah, I probably spent about $2,200, I would say, in total, not counting the Luigi covers that we just did, right? On Birthright #1 for the Kickstarter. And already, man, we've already got pretty much all the covers done for #2, except for the last one, which is actually being done by Mr. Matt Weldon. People might know Matt Weldon from the Drawn and Quarter streams that you see over on Mike's channel, you know, Mike S. Miller. Yeah. So, you know, he sent me a sketch the other day of what he wants to do for the cover. It was absolutely mind-blowing. You know, Matt has given me a very, you know, nice rate. He's very excited to do it. And you know, once I transfer him some money, you know, I'll post it on Twitter and we'll get people excited, you know. But it's well within the work. So we got Matt Weldon, you know, we got Steph Wilson is back, Paul Green is back, Luigi Terrell, you know, he'll be a part of it. Samir, the interior artist, he's also doing a cover, because I believe that whoever's drawing the book should have their own cover. You know, how many times, like, do you go buy a Marvel book or DC book and you see this great looking cover, right? And then you open up the pages and it's not the same thing inside, you know?
Yeah. I like that.
So I always make cover A, you know, like our entry sort of cover, right, by the interior artist. So what you see on the cover is what you get. And then all of the other sort of, you know, like the Paul Greens and all these other variants are just that. They're variants. You know what I mean? So you buy a variant knowing that it's not going to be the same on the inside.
Yeah. There's so many Zenescope cover artists that I love, and I'll still buy the books, but frequently I'll get a cover from Zenescope and then I'll open it up. I'm like, yeah, the interior's good, but it's serviceably good. It's not.
Well, I'll tell you this. I just bought a Zenescope book for the first time in a while. This is the book that I picked up. I bought it solely for the cover, and it's an issue 1. So I figure, you know, maybe, hey, I'll jump on this story. I have no idea what it looks like on the inside. I haven't opened it yet. You know, maybe that's a good test right now. Let's see, because this is a gorgeous cover. I'm not sure who the artist is, but it really caught my eye. But you know what? Actually, here, look, like, I just kind of opened the last page here. That actually looks pretty decent. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, Bell's a good book. In fact, if you find the trade paperback of the first Bell series, Critical Blast is quoted on the back cover.
Is that right, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I never read Bell. I mean, I've read a lot of Zenoscope books, but I never read Bell. I one of my favorite ones was actually Cinderella. She was savage.
Bell's a new one.
Yeah, look at this shot right here. Everyone's doing the bikes now, right? Here we go. Here's almost Batgirl like, but that's pretty cool,
Yeah, I love that.
So I can't wait to actually read this, and kind of give my thoughts. I always thought Zenoscope would be a good home for Nyobi, but I don't really think they take creator-owned books. I think they just kind of do their own thing. But I am looking for a publisher. I've been bugging Antarctic Press to sort of take me on. Caliber Comics has expressed interest, but they only print in trade, so they want me to do a couple more issues first, and then they'd be willing to print it as a trade. So that's still a little ways off yet, but yeah, we're in search for a publishing deal.
Well, I can definitely see Nyobi rubbing shoulders with Rags and with Common America, and just kind of sidling up into that little Antarctic universe.
Well, look, that's where I want to be. I've never made that a secret. I kind of always drop the hint on my social media that that's what I want. I think, being able to work with Matt Weldon and Brian and crew, it's good networking for that. I don't know what it will lead into. And if it never leads into anything, I'm still very cool with what we've been able to do so far. And if it does lead into more, then, that's just bonus. And Mr. Tim Lim, talk about a nice guy, man. Tim Lim is one of the nicest guys you're going to meet in comic books. And, Tim, always tells me, send me your newest stuff. I'll pass it on. I'll share it around the Antarctic, so he's been absolutely fantastic, fantastic to me. I got nothing but great things to say about any of those guys over on the Antarctic Press side of the wall,
Yeah, I was passing through Arkansas about 2 years ago and stopped in at the comic shop in Little Rock that Michael Tierney owns. Michael Tierney is one of the LCS guys that shows up on our bi-weekly roundtable of retailers who get together and grouse about the industry and what it's like on the front lines. And while I was there, Tim came in the store and we did a quick live stream on my phone in the corner of the store, just talking about his books and crowdfunding in general. That was a long time ago, and I haven't heard much from Tim since, ever since basically the big blow up, I guess, over Cash Grab came out, which still seems to be a sore spot with a lot of people. I don't know. Get over it, everybody. Make comics.
Well, Cecil seems to be doing pretty well with it now. I mean, let bygones be. No, he's not hurting. I mean, let bygones be bygones. I think a lot of these beasts are much over nothing. You know what I mean? And if you go back and break it down at its core issues, after a year or two, you might go, "Why in the hell were we fighting in the first place for?" But I'm not one to preach to the choir. Once in a while, something happens with me too, and I have to deal with a little bit of drama or something. And I don't think that's necessarily just related to comic books. I think that's just something that's just related to the current climate that we're in. This whole kind of political unrest that seems to be happening for the last few years.
All right. In fact, you talk about unrest. I just had a little pop up my phone here. The Alternate Comics channel is posting a video, case closed. Looks like Peter Smitty is releasing the police incident report that Phil Cummings has been.
Captain Cummings. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Captain Cummings. I used to be on some shows with Captain Cummings way back in the day before he started, doing sort of like SJW sort of content. There was a time when Phil was just a speculator, he collected a lot of old school Avengers and stuff like that. And he used to be on some shows that I was on called not I Love Comics, it was called We Love Comics. And there was another show called Key Issue Comics. This was like long before Comicsgate started. So I remember Phil quite well. And it doesn't surprise me that, Phil kind of, will poke the bear a little bit. Me and him didn't always get along. I came at things from a creator's point of view. He came at things from a I flip on eBay point of view. And so, we didn't really necessarily mesh that well. but I don't have any problems with him. But when it comes to Peter Simeti, I really like Peter Simeti, even though once in a while I've criticized him. I think Peter Simeti is one of the most genuine men in comic books. I've been fortunate enough to be on his streams a few times. He did when Stan Lee died, I was on the Stan Lee tribute stream with him for a bit. I called Peter Simeti at that point, the Stan Lee of this generation, in the sense of just being not that he's created like these, worlds and worlds of characters that we'll remember for 30 years, but more in the sense of he was just a great representative and spokesman for comic books. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
He was always like, I like to use the term genuine when I talk about Peter Simeti. He's one of the most genuine people you'll meet in comic books, as far as this whole police report thing, I think it's nonsense. I don't think that he necessarily has to prove anything to anybody. I remember when that whole swatting incident went down. I remember how it affected him for months. I remember watching him, literally tear up on stream. I don't think you do that for show. And I don't think you do that for, because you want to lie or try and get some weird clout. I honestly believe it happened, but he doesn't need to prove it to me,
No. Well, and the thing is that we ran an article on the swatting when it came up, and just to do due diligence, because it's what you do, we did ensure that it happened with the police department. And I knew that it happened with the police department, but I kept letting Phil just kind of dig his own hole. Like, did you?
Well, I'm not sure why this is an interest to him. If Phil really wanted to, do the Captain Cummings gig and pick a couple of fights, I'm sure there are other people that might deserve it more than Peter Simeti. I mean, it just seems like trying to kick the bear when it's down.
Is that, he's. How do we get onto this? Well, my pop-up came up. He's after saying, he's after the Peter Simeti swatting, and now he's onto the Richard Meyer doesn't have a case against Mark Waid. The only thing I can figure is he's got a 300 baud modem, and his tweets have a 2-year lag to them.
Okay, well, it's surprising that he's talking about the Richard thing. This is the first I heard of that. I might be out of the loop a little bit, but weren't these guys kind of like the guys who were OG Comicsgate? So kind of surprising that an OGer would kind of turn on another OGer, but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, maybe he's just trying to say, okay, everybody else has jumped on my bandwagon. I'm going to take the devil's advocate position again and just be really extreme about it and see what happens with it, see if it works. I don't think it's working for him this time, but it might be still too early in his long game. So the Nyobi Indiegogo, linked in the description below, everybody. How much longer has that got to go? And you've met goal on that one already?
No, we haven't met goal yet, but we're slowly inching there. It's got 21 days left. We have 29 backers, and we've raised 1,275 Canadian dollars, which is probably about 36 cents US.
That's my joke with the with the Kitchener-Con people every time they talk about.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Kitchener-Con. Here's the thing. I got banned from a convention last year because I spoke up for Vic Mignonia, right?
Oh, geez.
Yeah. Apparently don't do that if you want to stay in the convention scene. But Kitchener Comic Con, contacted me and asked me to be a guest at their show for 2021. See, Kitchener Comic Con, well, if I'm able to go, I'm going to go. See, Kitchener Comic Con's in Canada. They're in a province called Ontario, which is about a 20-hour drive from here. But, it'd be a very short plane flight. And I'd be willing to go just simply because they're willing to have me. And, last year, their big guest was Vic Mignonia and Nick Rekieta. You know what I mean? Like two people you probably not see at a convention anywhere near me anytime soon, And the fact that they'd be willing to have me as a guest, shows that there are still conventions out there that aren't leaning, in one political direction or another. They just want to have some fun and bring in the people that they want to see. So big shout out to Kitchener Comic Con,
I joked with Joe Hop and Crumbrion when we were on talking about Kitchener-Con the first time, and he was like, and the admission is free. I'm like, so if I come from America and I spend American free, you're actually giving me $1.86.
Yeah, they probably owe you money, They collect it on your way out, right? But no, they
Exactly.
look like they have a really fun convention. You know, it's kind of a smaller convention, but I like the small cons, you know, a lot better. I did a big con. I did the big Calgary Fan Expo, and I got to meet Todd McFarlane and Stan Lee before he passed. And as fun as that was, I mean, it's just a huge, you know, 100,000 people sort of beast over a 4-day weekend, and no one really knows who you are. In the smaller cons, you kind of get a little bit more attention. It's a little bit smaller venue, so a lot more people, you know, can come by and see your table and spend a little bit of time with you and shoot the breeze with you. And it's a little bit easier to sell a book, I think, in a smaller convention if you're kind of like a unknown creator or up and coming creator than it is to be kind of thrown in the big belly of the beast. You know, could you imagine being little Nyobi at, say, like New York Comic Con? You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah,
I'd be just like a very small minnow in a very large ocean, you know?
I'm sitting there with, you know, Remo Williams, the Destroyer novels at Wizard World St. Louis, and I felt out of place. But you know what? The cons aren't the same as they were in the 80s when I was in college, and I was like, you know, I've got no real job to go to. I can take a day, you know, weekend off and go to a convention. Mm-hmm. You went there and you saw comic book people. I mean, DC Comics had a booth in the corner. Marvel was over here. Everybody was selling comic books. Now I go to Wizard World. The only comic book things I can find is, you know, the local comic shop has a back issue box bin over in one side, and there'll be some guys who draw covers for Zenoscope who are just there doing prints. And there's no comic book publishers to go to these things except for San Diego and New York. Yeah, I miss comic book conventions when comic book people were there.
Well, you know, I'll tell you something that, you know, and then you hit it right on the nose, to the fact that it's not so much about comic books anymore, but everything else. But the comics really seem to take in the backside of things. You know, the con that I am banned from, I will give them a shout out on this, is that the con is actually built around comic books. The comic book creators are the stars. They're the ones that are in the spotlight. And it'd be nice to see more cons like that. The problem with my local con is that they're very much left leaning, right? And so if you don't sort of follow the sort of political path that they would like you to follow, you are deemed at that point a troublemaker and not worth having at the show. So apparently I'm a troublemaker for speaking up for Vic, but you know what? I'll continue to do stuff that I believe in. And if they don't want to have me, then that's fine. There are places like Kitchener that do. So I'm very cool with that.
Always some place to go. It's been a rough road for cons this year with everybody not being able to do anything.
Well, maybe we need that. Maybe we need that reset button. You know, maybe everyone needs to take a year off and kind of reevaluate what's going on. You know, not only with the current virus situation, but just with you know, how things are being run and conducted. I mean, there's so much controversy. There's so much arguing. There's so much fighting. There's so much, you know, drama and political divide that, you know, I was really kind of hoping that COVID might take that win right out of people and make people go, oh, you know what? Maybe there are bigger problems here than worrying about Safe Space and, you know, Trailblazer in New Warriors. Maybe we should be worried about this damn virus. But, you know, who knows?
Nah, it just kept us on Twitter 24/7 now. It just magnified it.
And that's the problem, right? You know, I think a lot of this drama and infighting and this weird shit going on would absolutely not exist or be very minimal if it wasn't for social media, you know, blowing it up
publicly.
Yeah. I mean, it's very dangerous for someone to be able to, you know, give an opinion to the rest of the world in 5 seconds or less at an impulse with the tap of a keyboard, right? I don't think anyone realized just what kind of power that was or how that was going to be handled, you know? And when these social medias first started off, it was no big deal. People could pop off their ideas and their opinions and no one really cared. But, you know, fast forward after the Trump election, and now all of a sudden, everything that you say is being scrutinized underneath a microscope and being twisted and turned to fit someone's agenda or the context that they want it to be about, whether it be right or wrong. And that's the other thing, is that everyone is so opinion and entitled these days that everyone thinks their opinion is right. And no one wants to have a conversation. They just want to be, this is how it is. This is what I think. I am right. You are wrong. And it doesn't matter what you say. We will beat you by any means necessary, which is the term I keep hearing all the time. And I'm like, that's where we're headed. That's pretty bad. That's pretty dangerous. You know, I want to see things kind of go back. When I was really enjoying conventions, you know, you mentioned the 80s. For me, it was like 2011, 2012, you know, just kind of right before all the censorship started taking place. You know, I met Gail Simone in 2011, Halifax, Nova Scotia. She was just the sweetest lady ever. You know, there wasn't any sort of political talk when I met her at her table, when I got her to sign my back girls. You know, it was, you know, talking about the creative process, the writing process. It was talking about Dungeons and Dragons and how she met her husband and the things that she was going to do on Red Sonja, you know. And that's what I miss. I don't know if the conversation would be the same if I met her now. I would hope it would be. But you know, sometimes she likes to go on Twitter and say some things that, you know, stir some people up, and sometimes people like to stir her up. So, you know, who knows? But I wish things could go back where everyone was just a fan of comic books, and it didn't matter who you voted for. You just made comics. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I miss comic books sometimes.
Right? Well, they're still out there, though. I mean, if you don't like what's on the shelf, guys, there's Kickstarter, there's Indiegogo, there's Amazon, there's Patreon. There are many, many other avenues, you know, where you can buy the alternative. They're out there. You just have to seek them out a little bit. That's all.
This really is, despite all the doom and gloom that you hear about the comic industry collapse and DC's doing this and Marvel's doing that, I still see this as a renaissance period for the comic book industry, simply because even without the crowdfunding, there are suddenly an influx of so many independent publishers out there. I made up the parable of the two trees with, you know that there were these two giant trees that just overshadowed everything, and they were rotting at the roots, and one fell over and it knocked the other with it, which, you know, DC and Marvel being that. And when everybody came out to see the massive destruction, they saw that there were all these smaller trees, just this beautiful forest standing there that they could never see before, because these two giant things were crowding them out and no one could get a glimpse at them. So,
well, and what's funny is these creators that are working for these, you know, for Marvel and DC are starting to realize, hey, there is something here on the other side of the river. What is this crowdfunding thing? I want to get in on this, you know? And so that's why you have like a Sean Gordon Murphy, you know, bringing a project to Indiegogo. That's why you have a Mark Wade who's on a late book, you know? But I mean, they're starting to realize that, hey, we don't necessarily have to do work for the big two, that it's been shown and proven that there is a market here, that there is a potential here for growth. And I think you're going to see a lot more creators, you know, coming out of the woodwork. And by creators, I mean, you know, creators who are from the mainstream industry, come and try their hand at crowdfunding, you know, expect it. And I get the question, you know, do you think that's a good or bad thing? And I think it's a mixed bag, but ultimately I think it's a good thing. You know, I wish I was running Nyobi on Kickstarter when Todd McFarlane started out that Spawn toy. Think about all the eyes that he brought on the Kickstarter alone, you know, by doing a $3 million campaign for Spawn, right? So you get toy fans, comic book fans, and just McFarlane fans to like just coming. And hopefully, you know, they scroll through Kickstarter for the Spawn toy, maybe they see a comic book that might catch their eye and maybe they buy it. You know, it's kind of like wrestling. You know, you have your big name stars on the main event, so you can give exposure to the little guys, you know, as people come to watch them in the eye. It's like WCW, right? You had Chris Benoit and Jericho and Dean Malenko being the workhorses, but you had Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, and Piper being the main attraction, right? So,
yeah, I'm really surprised that DC didn't balk at SGM doing the whole crowdfunded comic thing. I'm surprised they didn't have him under an exclusive contract of some sort.
Well, you know, a lot of these companies do. I know Marvel likes to use a lot of exclusive contracts with their top tier talent. I tried to contact Greg Land to do a cover for me, and he's like, "Yeah, no, I can't do it, man. Under a contract with Marvel," you know. But yeah, I mean, I like to see some more cool books come out. I think there's room on the shelf for everything, and you know, if they want to try their hand at crowdfunding and bring their big name appeal over and, you know, give some exposure to Indiegogo or Kickstarter, I say all the power to them. Let them roll.
Right. Evil Animosity is in the chat. He or she just listed an entire stack of comics they'd backed on Kickstarter. I did back the Tarot Witch of the Black Rose on Kickstarter as well, so I'm waiting for that one.
Well, isn't that Jim Ballant book?
Yes, I had him on the stream 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so Jim Ballant, you know, I mean, I remember, you know, first seen his work in Catwoman, like way back in the day, right? So I'm a big fan of him. You know, they mentioned Lady Death. Of course, I'm a big fan of Brian Polito. I backed every single campaign since he started. He's got Local Hero there, Vixens and Sirens. Sugar Pop too. That is the Dan Mendoza book, which is doing extremely well right now. So he's absolutely right. All on Kickstarter for sure.
Well, Evil Animosity, be watching for the next Nyobi book on Kickstarter and get out there and add that to your collection.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's going to be late July, early August. I want to get a bunch of pages done before I launch. I usually like having a book at least, well within the works before I even talk about like a Kickstarter for it. Right now, we have all the covers done, but we haven't started on the interior pages yet. But I figured that process will actually probably begin within the next 2 or 3 weeks. And, once we get going, it doesn't take long at that point. Like I said, the team is good. The team is reliable. Before where I used to have to wait on pages and chase people around for pages. Now it's like, hey, I've just done 3 pages. You want to review them? It's like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. So, good guys on the team.
Faster.
Faster than
work, get paid.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing. I find a big mistake is that if you pay an artist all up front right away, then they already got the money. So they're not in a big rush to do it, right? The way that I work with my team is I pay them a couple of pages. They draw a couple of pages. Then they want more money. So then I pay them a couple of more pages, right? And then they draw a couple of pages. You always kind of keep the bait on the hook. You know what I mean? And then you find work gets done faster,
That's the way to do it. I mean, I couldn't even think of coming up with the money all in advance anyway to pay an artist to do a comic book. And I always say that when I talk with creators doing crowdfunding is that, people backing your book don't necessarily realize that, you're already in the hole X amount of dollars and you're trying to hit the break-even point before even seeing a profit because you had to pay an artist to do all the work already before you could start the crowdfunding.
Well, yeah, it's a grind, man. As far as paying for pages up front, hopefully the Indiegogo will give me a few extra dollars to put towards pages. I certainly won't pay for it all, but any sort of profit that we do make kind of gets cycled back into the comic book in one form or another. I mean, that's how we were able to pay for all the new covers was from the Kickstarter, the Kickstarter kind of paid me back for some of the money I pumped into it. And then I turned around and used that money to make the covers for the next book. And, whatever sort of money we make from Indiegogo outside of printing and shipping will all go back towards, getting the book produced.
Cycle it back around to the next one.
Yep.
All right. Well, Larry, we spent an hour on here. Everybody who's watching this or watching the replay, definitely go down to the description, hit that link to Nyobi Birthright, back that, get that thing up to and past the goal. It's definitely worth your time to do so, I think. I really love it.
Well, we want to hit we want to hit stretch goals, man. We want to give out some nice stretch goals. So let's make it happen.
Absolutely. Hit those stretch goals. And if you were in the chat and your finger was itching to hit that super chat button and you just couldn't find it, that's because we don't have one. You can help us get one. We are 30 subscribers away from hitting 1,000, and then we've got a long to go.
Hey man, I would love to see you get that 1,000 subscribers. That is indeed a milestone. As a guy that runs YouTube, and I've been doing YouTube off and on for 9 years, I still haven't been able to get to 1,000 subscribers. I've ran a couple of different channels. Rebel Gaming is kind of the one I do right now, and that's at 400 plus. So I still got a long way to go. The fact that you're only 30 away, brother, you'll get that, man.
Well, if anybody subscribes and they take a screenshot of it, that they subscribed and they DM that to our Twitter account at Critical Blast on Twitter, we will send you one of these 3-inch holofoil Critical Blast stickers as a thank you.
Damn!
You just tell us where it is. I mean, literally, we had a guy in the United Kingdom say, "Well, I'm all the way over here." I'm like, "Send me your address." That was, it's only $1.20 to mail it to United Kingdom, and it's on its way to him. So, yes, we will mail it anywhere.
And definitely send me the link for stickers because that actually looked really, really cool. I got to get hooked up.
All right, man. Well, Larry, appreciate having you on here. Glad you popped on to our open mic night the other weweek there.
That was fun.
We wanted to give you a whole hour here to talk about it.
I appreciate that, man. Thanks for having me on. You guys run a good show. I was actually going through your archive yesterday, just checking out some of the other interviews, man. You guys get around. You know what I'm saying?
Some are better than others, but sometimes I say the same thing over and over again to different people, but I try to keep it on the up and up and keep it different. So we're always open. Anybody out there who has a comic project that wants to, promote it. If you're doing a book project, this is the point where I say, if you really want to help us out, go buy Bulletproof Origins on Amazon by Stephen J. Mitchell.
There you go.
Or just go to the website at criticalblast.com. You don't have to spend a thing. Let the ads pay for your trip, and we'll benefit from that too. Which is, of course, our core business, criticalblast.com. We're not a YouTube company. We're a entertainment media review company and book publisher. So this is just kind of sort of what we do to draw people into the site, and it's working for us. But we appreciate every one of you popping by here, and we appreciate our guests like Larry. So let us know if you've got a project and you want to come talk with us. Larry, I'm going to end the show. And again, we appreciate you being here. Best of luck with Nyobi. And when you get the next one started in a couple of months, hope to have you back.
Hey, brother, I'd love to be back, and thanks for having me on.